I want to welcome Mike Modest on. Mike, how you doing today?
Good.
That's good. You in town right now?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Mike? Yeah, I'm in town. I'm just working at my day job.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Well, we're doing pretty good. Anything new as far as going on with you right now?
Nothing new. Everything's pretty. Yeah, it's basically hurry up and wait. That's where I am right now.
Are you under contract or what's the status of that?
No, I'm not under contract. When I went out there and worked for WCW, basically I was offered a contract, which I accepted. I was told that it was a done deal, and no contract was ever sent out. When the new regime, I just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, a day late and a buck short, I guess. I was told by the old management that it was a done deal and that I would be signing for sure. It was a 2-year deal. And then when the new regime came in, everything was like on hold. And so my contract never got sent out, so I haven't signed anything. I am not under contract. I've spoken with Terry Taylor and several other people from the company, and basically what they've told me is that I'm just on hold right now, and I've been told just to hang in there. There's no answer, as to whether or not they are going to honor the agreement or not. So I really don't know anything at this point.
Do you know anything about Christopher Daniels?
Chris is basically in the same situation as me, but I do believe he has a contract. It's kind of a weird deal. I was used on TV, and I think I got over pretty well. I was used on TV, and I didn't yet have the contract, and Chris has a contract, and he hasn't been used yet. And Chris is basically, from what I understand, he's in the same kind of boat where it's just, right now we're concentrating on the guys that are here that have been used. We don't want to bring in any new talent at this point, so just, hold on and wait.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's kind of a terrible position to be in, because
you're
when I went out there, what's that?
You're in that limbo again.
Yeah, it's the worst place to be. It really is.
As far as your wrestling plans right now, are you going to be doing some independent shows while waiting, or?
Yeah, I've got some dates out in Pennsylvania for Pennsylvania Championship Wrestling, and then of course I'll still be wrestling with APW, and there's some other indies that just like little startup indies here and there, a couple down at Fresno and around. So yeah, I'll be still working indies.
Anything big going on in the indie scene as far as new companies that you've seen or that are looking good?
No, not right now. PCW of course is pretty good, but they're kind of a mainstay type indie. They've been around for a little while now. And APW always looks good to me, but other than that, nothing that I think actually looks really good. There's some indies with money apparently, but nothing that I see that's really promising. I hear something about something that's starting up, possibly like a minority league, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
really?
I hear about a league that may be like strictly ethnic, African American, Latino, and Asian. Yeah, I've heard.
Like out here, or like on the east?
No, I think that was going to be on the East Coast, but I'm not really sure. They went down and looked at some guys in L.A. And they also looked at one of the APW guys, Tony Jones, who just got back from Battle Arts. He went out to Japan and wrestled for Battle Arts. And then also they looked at Brown Bomber, Robert Thompson, and also Boyce LeGrand out here. So they're looking for people right now, I guess.
Did you talk to Tony as far as how he liked Japan and everything?
Yeah, he loved it. He had a great time. I think he only worked like twice. I think there was some kind of screw up with his plane ticket, so he didn't get out there, in time for his first match. But then he, wrestled the second two matches, and I guess he was really over, and there's a real strong possibility he's going to be returning there for a lengthy tour. I guess he was very over back there, and his mother's half Japanese, so he understands Japanese and speaks a little. So he and plus with that shooting background and stuff, I mean, he fits right in over there.
I know it's always been kind of your goal to get over there. Is there any, do you think there's any chance that you can go over like with him or something? Because I know you can.
I just was talking to Beef Wellington not too long ago, and he wants to get me out to Michinoka, and of course I'd love to go. Japan's always, it's my favorite thing to watch. I like the Japanese wrestling, especially like All Japan, and so yeah, I'm definitely working on it, and I'm going to be sending some footage to All Japan as well.
You should work on that, because if you could get in there, that would be, that'd be a great career.
Yeah, I'd love it. I'd love to get back there.
Let's start the phone calls. We're going to go to Danny in Hawaii. You're first up.
Oh, yeah, actually it's Darren.
Darren, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, hey, Dave, I just want to say, I love your show. I think it's really, I just was listening to you for like the past 3 weeks, I think, and found you through The Law, which I used to listen to, and I really, really liked your interviews. I especially like that one that, not an interview in particular, but that one caller that you were talking about, that wrestler that was the Japanese wrestler put in the hospital.
Fukuda?
Yeah, and he was trying to tell you, like, you don't know the story and stuff.
Oh, no, that wasn't a Japanese wrestler. That was Jeff Peterson.
Oh, sorry. Well, and you were willing to recant your story if he just told you the real story, but he wasn't willing to give it up.
That wasn't a fun deal. That was like the only caller I think I've had in 6 months that actually, like, I just thought was really like, oh God.
I totally agree with you on that. But anyway, I'll have a quick question. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I just wanted to know, as far as all your interviews that you've done, what was the worst interview that you've ever done with either wrestler, promoter, or manager for that matter, and why? And then what was the one that you would like to do but haven't done yet?
I don't know. God, I'd like to do but haven't done. I don't know. I mean, there's people out there. I'd like to get Kurt Angle on the show. I mean, I don't know what. I'd like to get Jericho on the show. Just as some names that I would personally like to get on the show. I don't really like anyone that I would. I'm dying to interview that I never have.
I remember, like, even one time I listened to The Law, and I think Donnie Abreu, he was saying that the Undertaker was really hard to do an interview with because he just doesn't break character.
Yeah, I don't know if I would like to do the Undertaker, even though he's a superstar, for that, because it's too gimmicky. I like to just talk to people like people. I don't know. As far as on this show, there's no one I would really. I will say that the most disappointing one was Luthez, because he wouldn't break character, and I've known him for so long, and he always does with me, and I think just the fact that it was like public to so many people, and it was, I was disappointed in that one. I mean, if I had to pick one on this show,
right?
Because that was like the first week I think we did the show, and he was like one of the maybe the third or fourth guy I had on, and I was really looking forward to it because, he's been around forever and knows every story in the book, and he wasn't really very forthcoming.
Is there a certain reason why, like, I don't or have a hard time finding any, website or anything that has anything from, Triple H or Steve Austin for that matter? I've seen Steve Austin on, like Conan O'Brien and stuff like that, but, just a long, lengthy interview or something, I know, like, The Rock's done a few. I was just wondering, is there, like, when they reach a certain status, they just prefer not to, or they're too busy, or is that what it is?
They are really busy, and there are a lot of demands on their time. I mean, Helmsley he's done some mainstream stuff, things like that. Austin's kind of a shy type of person, actually.
Oh.
As far as I don't think he really enjoys doing it. He does it because it's when it's necessary. Whereas some people like, I think Mick Foley, maybe not as much now because he did so much this year, but I think in the past, I think he really got a kick out of it. And he may still, for all I know. I'm just saying that, like, then all of a sudden when you become a superstar, the demands are, like, incredible on your time.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks for the time, and I appreciate your show. I'll keep listening.
Okay, thanks a bunch, Darren.
Bye.
Okay, let's go to Andy in Los Angeles. Andy, how are you today?
Not bad. How's it going, Dave?
It's going pretty good.
Hey, Mike, I'm tempted to offer my condolences on losing the big job, but, well, considering who it's with, I don't know if I want to offer too much condolences. But maybe you can get back in there, or maybe the WWF will come calling. I want to talk about last night's show, Dave. I would give it a thumbs up, but I'll tell you, I had to agree with JR. That ending to the two Christus matches really sucked, and it really took the whole... those guys put on a clinic. And, man, how could they come up with that finish? I don't know.
Mike, did you watch the pay-per-view last night?
No, I sure didn't, Dave.
You would have enjoyed it. It was some real... Dean Malenko and Scotty Tuhati had a tremendous match. Benoit and Jericho had a tremendous match, but I agree with Andy. It was a finish where they'd gone 15 minutes, done everything in the world to each other, and then it was Benoit off the top ropes with a headbutt, and Jericho, pulls the belt in front of him, and Benoit headbutts the belt, and they just call a DQ on Jericho. So
the ref had taken a bump. He hadn't seen the belt come into the ring. All he saw was the belt lying there, and he calls the DQ, and you should have heard JR, Mike. That sucked. He just yelled it out loud, which is kind of ironic given that he's on the booking committee in the first place.
Well, I think that was more because from the finish was supposed to be that, which we just and what it looked like on the camera. If you remember the first time we saw it, you couldn't really see the finish, and I think that he was reacting to the fact that based on what he saw, the finish, it was just a weak DQ. Whereas when he sees the replay and the replay shows what it's supposed to be, he just goes, "Oh, I was wrong," and the referee made the right call. I think that the suck was kind of more of a reaction to, as it was going on, seemingly being really bad refereeing.
Well, it was a pretty genuine reaction, and I kind of had the same reaction. The other funny thing that he said that really struck me as ironic. Well, actually, before I get off that match, Lawler did a WCW move last night that was just smacked of Heenan when Chris put the abdominal stretch on Jericho, and he said, "I'll have a heart attack if he gives up to this move." Remember that?
Yeah. Jim Ross mentioned Wilbur Schneider.
Yeah, it's not so much that, but just the fact that Lawler said, "I'll have a heart attack if he gives up to that move." It's like all those times in WCW where Heenan, with the first thing when a submission move gets slapped on, he won't quit.
I always hate when the announcers don't sell it. Mike, what do you think as far as a wrestler? Because you do a lot of mat wrestling in your matches.
What's that? I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood the question.
Just as far as the calling of a match, as far as when you put on, say, a leg lock or an arm bar or something like that, that's a near submission going for a rope break, and then the announcers, use it as a comedy moment.
Yeah, I can't stand that. And one of the other things that really disappoints me now is that everybody uses the submissions like the cross arm breaker and everything. They use it as rest holds, and it kind of destroys the believability of the move. It's one of the things that I think, it's like Ric Flair really worked a long time to get the figure four leg lock over, and now it's pretty much a rest hold.
Well, I think
in most matches when you see it used, except when Flair uses it. But it's kind of a shame because you don't see a whole lot of submission wrestling out here in the States. Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why is because the announcers don't sell it, and they don't put over the submission holds.
Well, also, submission holds, I think, got killed by all of these stiffs in the 80s and 90s who did use it as a rest hold, and people saw right through it. And submissions don't work in the era of extreme wrestling either. Who's going to submit when you're getting wrapped up in barbed wire? The other thing... go ahead.
I know the point you're making, but in the Benoit Jericho match, when Benoit got that crossface on, that was the crowd really came alive.
Yeah, they really reacted to it.
And the Walls of Jericho also when Jericho got the Walls of Jericho back on. So I think that if you get the move over, now if it's a move that the fans don't know and that the announcers don't know how to explain, you're right. It won't get over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing that was kind of ironic out of the commentators last night was Jim was complaining about Eddie Guerrero setting race relations or the image of Latinos back 10 years by the way he talks because of that silly gimmick that they styled him with now.
He said that on the air?
Yes.
Wow.
I caught it.
That's kind of what we were saying last week.
I caught it as Eddie was coming in because there was a lot of commotion being made. It was just when he was making his entrance and he was getting undressed for the match. And I thought, well, that's pretty ironic coming from a guy on the booking committee.
I'm amazed he said. I mean, I remember when Pat, did you catch the line when Patterson came in?
No, what did he say? I couldn't hear it.
Okay, they had Patterson came in. Patterson came in when Pat Patterson did the run-in in the main event last night, and he just goes, "Oh my God, it's Patterson! He's right back from the parade." They had just had like a gay rights parade in D.C. that afternoon, so that's where that line was. And I didn't know they had. I kind of assumed it, and then someone like wrote me a letter and goes, "Oh, by the way, there was a gay rights parade that afternoon in D.C. that was pretty high profile."
I could not understand what Jarrett said because the audience really picked up at that point. I was wondering what I thought he said the party or something. It sounded like he took a swing at him.
Yeah.
The one thing that I thought was just a little disturbing last night was how badly the audience wanted Trish Stratus to go through that table. I mean, they were chanting for it from the beginning.
They didn't want to see them wrestle at all.
They could have just gone out there, just thrown her into the ring, have her go through the table, and not have a match, and the audience would have been just as happy, which is kind of disturbing. How are heels supposed to get over anymore? If putting a woman through a table gets you a face pop, what the hell makes a heel out of you these days?
Let's see. You put a baby face through a table, maybe. I don't know, Mike. What do you think?
They put Rock through a table.
I think one of the problems, with a lot of heels is that they're not believable heels. They all have a cartoon voice, and people don't believe that they're really a bad guy. So when they see something happen, they know it was supposed to happen. It's like we all loved Darth Vader when we were kids and watched Star Wars. Well, that's because we knew Darth Vader wasn't real. And I think the key to getting legitimate heat is if people believe what you're doing is real and not supposed to happen.
Well, you know what it is? I think the loss of jobbers really hurts because that was a great way to get a heel over, was just kill a jobber, not pin him 5 or 6 times, 1, 2, pull him up, without people to thrash, basically, like what the Moondogs used to do for them.
But see, even that, to me, like when I'm healing, I don't pick a jobber up. Because to me, that's cartoon. If you're a real badass and you're a real mean person, you're going to go in there, demolish him, pin him as fast as possible, and just be in and out of the ring. And that's one of the things. Like you started seeing like all the heels. They'd go for the cover, 1, 2, pick the guy up. You already knew it was coming. It's no different than the heel going for the count, 1, 2, and then the guy kicks out, and now the heel looks at the ref and slaps the mat 3 times. Come on, ref. Stuff like that it gets so corny because they just do it all the time. It gets so overly used.
The thing is, though, when you talk about go in there, demolish and get out, that's basically Stone Cold Steve Austin as a face or a heel. I mean, if there's no differentiation anymore between behavior and face and heel, I don't know how you get either of them over, to be perfectly honest. Speaking of which, he was looking pretty fat last night, wasn't he?
Well, that's what happens when you're laid up and you can't train.
Yeah, I mean, he looked like Prince Albert with a shave, basically.
I thought he looked like, what I thought he looked like was Ron Harris. But much shorter, obviously.
Yeah, and he was pretty sluggish too when he was swinging that chair. It's like, wow, he was really rusty. I said, hopefully, I'm glad that they did it the way they did it. That they left the 2 guys to carry most of the match, and he was just out there for a minute, minimizing exposure. He
had to be, looking back on it, because you could tell he really couldn't do anything physically.
He didn't get touched. Nobody touched him.
They couldn't. I'm sure he couldn't. He couldn't take a bump. I mean, you saw when he went down how much trouble he had just getting up.
Yep.
So, this is from Ben talking about last night's show. He says, although it was a solid show, I was disappointed that other than Trish Stratus getting slammed through a table, there were no unexpected happenings. Everything the people wanted, they got. Last night's show was the closest thing to a wrestling show that WF has put on in a long time. Yeah, I was, the lack of outside skits, and it was almost all in the ring, or 90% in the ring. It was a very different feel to the show. But it worked because it was good. It needed good matches. I mean, a show like that would really fail with bad ones, and the guys delivered. I actually, after Trish getting slammed through the table, I thought was totally expected. I thought everything on the show was expected, but it was okay. Sometimes expected isn't bad. In fact, I think that show, there was a lesson to that show, and that's what it was. How did you like Big Show's Hogan impersonation? I mean, it was comedy. It was pretty good. It was fine. it wouldn't have been good had it lasted much longer. He did it for 2 minutes, and then got on with the rest of the show. This is from this says that Beyond the Mat is scheduled to be released June 30th all across Canada, which I was not aware of. Let's see. Barry Thrill here says the Hogan parody last night was quite possibly the funniest parody I've ever seen, maybe because Paul White knows Hogan personally, but the WWF did the camera work excellent by being behind White the whole time walking down the walkway. I felt like I was in 1990 at the Sky Dome. And this is, in your opinion, which was a better pay-per-view, the EMLL pay-per-view on March 17th or Backlash? EMLL pay-per-view, I was thinking about that this morning when I was writing stuff up. And EMLL pay-per-view was definitely a better show, I thought, than Backlash, because the main event with Viano Tercera and Atlantis was so good. It was the match of the year. And undercard was maybe even, but just superior main event, just far superior main event. Let's see. This is regarding Paul Heyman. Why would Paul Heyman be furious about being offered a Tuesday night time slot on CNN as has been reported elsewhere? From what I gather, it's been suggested to him. He's balked at it, and I think the reason is that he is under the impression that the WWF is going to go on TNN in September, that he's going to be getting kicked off, so why build up a new time slot on Tuesday only to lose it? Because at the beginning, not always, but generally speaking, switching time slots, you're going to lose some audience. And so I think that it's like, why, rebuild the product from scratch? A lot of people have blamed Friday night for ECW's ratings. And they may be right, and they may not be right, because Roller Jam, and I checked into this, Roller Jam used to do 2 hours on Friday, and then it switched to 1 hour on Tuesday and 1 hour on Friday, and the Tuesday never did the rating that the Friday did. And ECW, while the demographics are not exactly the same as Roller Jam's, they're pretty darn similar. Let's go to Dominic in Virginia. Dominic, you're up with myself and Mike Modest.
How are we doing, Dave? Mike.
Yes.
Actually, I'm trying to figure out, you were saying that they're not going to use you because they don't know where to put you. But they can find But they can find Mike Awesome and put him in right away, or they're possibly going to bring in, by Lance Storm and probably put him right away.
Yeah, it's a little different. Those guys are, what you would consider quote unquote name guys.
Sure.
Of course they're going to listen to a guy like that, and they're going to talk to him and so on and so forth. Me, I'm just a little indie guy. I've been working for 8 years now, and I'm not really a name. So it's a totally different, situation. And no, I haven't said that they aren't going to use me. In fact, they haven't said that either. All they've said is basically just hold on, just hang in there. They haven't really said anything one way or the other yet. It's really funny. The guys in WCW, the locker room atmosphere is incredible. They're a great bunch of guys, and they have a hell of a lot of talent over there. Me and Chris Candido spent a lot of time together. We shared rent-a-car and everything, and Chris and I have a lot of the same, beliefs about the business and everything. And, so I really think it's a great company. And, one of the other callers, they called and said, I'd like to give you my condolences for not getting hired. And then again, maybe it's the best thing that you didn't, maybe it'd be better if you went and worked for WWF, to be honest with you, WCW is always, kind of the company I'd rather work for, because of the fact that in the past, they have been the company that does the wrestling. Now WWF, they're so full of talent right now. When they got when they got Malenko and Guerrero and Saturn and et cetera, they really, I don't think, are looking for talent right now.
Mike, you can maybe
WCW is still in a position where I think they can still use talent.
Yeah, because unfortunately, there's very few people right now they could possibly work into, but in a way, a lot of wrestlers they have. I figure like your beliefs in wrestling are, true and form. But how do you feel personally about David Arquette being the world heavyweight champion?
Well, I'd like to plead the fifth on that one. I'd like to just say no comment.
I dig where you're coming from,
so that I can stay political. I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to go towards that entertainment thing that McMahon has done, but at the same time, McMahon has done the entertainment thing with guys like The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin and Jericho and you know, it's a little different than just you know, bringing in David Arquette. You know, hey, I don't know, to each his own, and you know, I'm sure the ratings will tell them whether or not they're going in the right direction with that. You know, I mean, they're not dumb guys. You know, both Russo and Bischoff really know what they're doing. You know, and so they'll know whether or not they made the right decision.
Also, with the independent scene, just wondering, were you ever offered to work the Grade 8 in Delaware?
No, I was not.
Yeah, so that would have actually been a real good fit. I won't say a good fit, but at least would, like they did last year with Christopher Daniels, kind of bring someone that really no one ever heard before from outside the East Coast. I figure like that would be good for you. Cause I thought,
yeah, there's a lot of indies out there that I'd love to work for. Wolverine Pro's one of them. You know, is another one. Unfortunately, you know, I'm kind of cursed being out here in California. You know, the airfare is so expensive. You know, I just, you know, I can't thank Blaine DeSantis of Pennsylvania Championship Wrestling enough for bringing me out, and he's brought me out on a pretty consistent basis, and you know, it's really given me a chance to meet a lot of really, you know, great guys like Cheetah Master and Lance Diamond or Simon Diamond. You know, really great guys that I wouldn't have normally had a chance to meet and be acquainted with.
And I think with those guys, I mean, like I know Cheetah Master is a very regular in ECWA, and I mean, at least for me, it's only about an hour and 50-minute drive. So instead of the 4-hour drive to Pennsylvania to see work.
Yeah.
But also, final question. I mean, you were talking about Michinoku and possibly, you know, Battle Arts and All Japan. I mean, you said you're like pretty much a huge mark for Japanese wrestling. If you could have like quote unquote your dream match against someone in Japan, lightweight or heavyweight, who would it probably be?
Misawa is like, I mean, I just watched that guy and he's amazing, man. You know, there's a lot of guys back there though, like, you know, Kawada's, you know, awesome, and Kabashi and Akiyama. You know, there's a lot of talent out there, and there's a lot of guys that I'd love to get in the ring with, but I think Misawa would probably be the one that I'd most like to be able to get in the ring with.
You basically say if you could ever do that, that would pretty much make your career just one match against them.
Yeah, I mean, damn near would. You know, it's funny. It's like, you know, even with the WCW thing, you know, I'm not the type to, you know, cry baby about things, because, you know, I'm just really thankful for the opportunity that they gave me. You know, when I arrived in South Padre Island, you know, I was expecting to wrestle Elix Skipper again. And I wrestled Elix Skipper on the Worldwide show, and they used me as Mike Carrillo because they didn't research the rights to Modest yet. And you know, we had a hell of a match, and in my opinion, it was actually a better match than my match against the Artist.
Well, actually, most matches will be better than any match against the Artist.
Well, you know, the Artist is a hell, you know, he's a good worker too, but you know, I mean, you know, some people they just click better with others, and Elix Skipper, he's a hell of an athlete, and
I think, is he right now in New Japan? Because I know they got about 4 guys out there from WCW.
No, he's not. They got Rick Cornell, Chuck Palumbo, and Dan Devine are the 3 guys out in New Japan right now. But he may go because they're saying different. I think they want to send different guys every month.
Nothing wrong with that. And more, hey, they need, because with, I mean, pretty much Saturday night done. It sounds like done for good, and like, and there's really no independent deal with NWA Worldwide or Heartland yet. I mean, this is pretty much the only way for them to, I mean, for any lower level guys to work right now. Which I think is kind of sad in a way, because really, at least Worldwide gave them a chance to at least, you know, I would say show their stuff, but at least get the exposure somewhat, get matches done.
I think WCW, what they would benefit them is to open up an office somewhere like in Oregon and Washington, because it's so far away that nobody would ever see it, and send like a couple of veterans. You know, like WCW, like WWF did with Steve Regal, that kind of a guy. You know, and they have they also have Lawler, and you know, like Cornette in Ohio Valley, and have a couple of veterans that they're not using, but they're good workers. You know, kind of work the main events and do the interviews, and then coach these guys and have them work, you know, 5 cities a week. You know, even if it's in front of only 100 people, it's 5 cities a week. You learn to wrestle. I think that would really speed up the progress, because I think. You know, and Mike, you know, you'd be a good person to talk to this about. You know, it's like, I mean, what if you were able, because you've never really been able to do like a 5 or 4 show a week schedule. It's always been a couple weekends here and things like that. Don't you think that would really speed up your progress and learning curve?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, that's one of the things that's helped me is just, you know, having a ring so close. I'm always in the ring, you know, working out. It is completely different, and it is a lot better to be in front of a crowd, you know, and have that. But yeah, without a doubt, I mean, I just think I'd be so much smoother and even better, you know, than I am if I had that opportunity to work, you know, 3-4 nights a week.
I think WCW, the best thing for them to do would be, like, stay out in Southern California or Texas, where if, like, they want to kind of rebuild the cruiserweight division, because I think they're trying to level certain people away from that. Like, the Candido, he may have that belt for 3-4 months, and they'll jump up one more. At least they can pick up some luchadors out there and try to give them a work right now. Trying to, you know, even, like, quote, adapting a little bit to the American style just so they can get used to it.
You know, the one thing with WCW, though, is like, realistically, if you actually look at the roster, they have a really good roster. They just have to there's just a lot of guys that are kind of like in a holding pattern that they need to bring into the mix.
Yeah, like a lot over, basically younger, even like luchadors. Actually,
they've got some great luchadors out there. And Jude Guerrero is one of the best workers in the business.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know how good he's off from the injury, but again, he's in the Super Juniors. Actually, what is the deal with Psychosis? From last I heard of anything, he just wants to wrestle in Tijuana. He doesn't really give a crap what's going to happen with him in WCW.
I don't know how it relates to WCW. I just know that, you know, he's wrestling Tijuana every weekend, and he's doing a big hair match on May the 12th with Rey Mysterio's uncle. And I haven't seen him in WCW in a while. I don't know if he's fired or what the story is. I mean, a couple of weeks ago he came back, but he hasn't been around. But then again, I don't know if he no-showed several dates, and then they didn't book him a lot as well. So I don't know what his status is. Don, we got to get running, okay?
All right, roll off. Good night, John.
Okay, thanks very much. Got a couple of email questions for you, Mike. This is from Rich Hunt, who says, who were some of the wrestlers that you patterned your style of wrestling after?
Well, you know, Mike Tenay, you know, it was funny. Mike Tenay came up to me after I wrestled Elix Skipper and also the artist, and Mike Tenay came up and he said, "You were a big Stevens fan, weren't you?" And I says, "Yeah." He says, "How'd you know?" And he goes, "Man, I can really see it in your wrestling." So I mean, that's one of them for sure, Ray Stevens. And then, you know, I've always liked just the good physical, you know, wrestling. You know, I've watched a lot of guys like Mike Graham, Bob Orton Jr., you know, a lot of guys like that, even Terry Funk. You know, I mean, I watch a lot of the older guys and learn from them. Roddy Piper, you know, I try to take a little bit from every guy, but I would say that if I patterned myself after anybody, it would be Ray Stevens.
I remember the first time I saw you wrestle, which was in San Jose. It was many years ago. I just remember it was Father's Day, but I don't remember the year. And you were wrestling Max Justice,
yes,
who as Mike Diamond at that point.
Yeah.
And I just remember it was like, wow. I mean, that was the first thing that popped into my head watching you, and you've improved, you know, loads since then because that's many years back.
Yes.
But it was very much a Ray Stevens, you know, kind of a Ray Stevens, smaller heel, you know, that you know, wrestling, because I saw Ray Stevens as you did,
yes,
wrestle a lot of real big guys. And, you know, what's funny about, like, talk about believability. I mean, I know as a kid, I saw Ray Stevens wrestle most matches against guys much bigger than him, and I never ever had that feeling that Ray Stevens wasn't going to come out ahead because he was smaller, because of the way he wrestled. And he sold a ton in those matches.
Yeah.
But he was never, you know, you never got the feeling he was ever out of it, yet he you know, I mean, Ray Stevens, for people who don't know about him, was a guy who could go in there with someone who was really one of the worst workers in the world, you know, kind of like a Bret Hart when Bret Hart was really on, and make you think that, wow, this guy, you know, this guy's a really great worker. Yeah.
One of the things, that's one of the biggest things I think in my style that resembles Stevens is if you give a lot in a match and you take a lot of bumps for a guy, when you do go over, you're beating somebody. Whereas if you go in there and pummel a guy and you're greedy and you want all the heat, and now you beat him, it really doesn't mean a whole lot. You haven't beaten anybody. You've beaten a jobber is all you've done. When I wrestled Elix Skipper, you know, he had the big comeback. He was tossing me all around, boom, 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 shot me in for a backdrop, gave me a really nice high backdrop, and shot me in again. Boom, I cut him off, took it home, got the quick cover, and that was it. You know, so he was, even though I went over, he was still over as well. You know, it leaves the crowd with the impression, well, it could have really gone either way. And so it really makes it look like you've beaten somebody.
And it also makes, the guy coming close. I mean, I remember growing up watching San Francisco wrestling, and we had squash matches on television, but they were not like squash matches that when I went to New York and saw their television. Mm-hmm. The New York squash matches would be a big guy like a Stan Stasiak, whoever the heel at the time was, come in and pummel a guy for 2 minutes. I mean, our quote squash matches would go anywhere from 8 to 12 minutes on television, and whoever the guy was doing the losing on the losing end, got a lot of offense in, and always got, threatening spots and hope spots, and,
exactly.
Like Mike, you probably remember Jerry Monty, the late Jerry Monty.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
we saw him in... Yeah, Jerry Monty, we saw him in many what I would call really good matches, but they were really he never went over almost ever.
Yeah. Jerry Monty was the guy that actually originally broke me in and to the business, and he's one of those guys, man. I've never heard anybody say a bad word about him. He was a great guy, and he was a pretty good worker and had a hell of a body on him, in his younger days and everything. And I'd seen a lot of footage on him where even though he wasn't one of the main event guys, you wouldn't really know it by the way he looked and by the way he acted in the ring. And when he had that heel on the run, you would actually start buying it. You know what? This might be his night. And that's one of the things I like about Japan too is they'll take a guy, a young kid, bring him in, and he'll job maybe for 2 years, but eventually he starts getting those wins, and you keep him over like that, and it adds a lot of credibility to the wrestler,
one of the things All Japan just did in the last tour actually, that I thought was tremendous watching it was I don't know if you've seen the tape of this yet, but it was the 7-second win that Takao Omori beat Jun Akiyama.
No,
because it was a guy. It was tremendous because it was a guy. Everyone knew Akiyama was going over, and he just got beat. And the way Akiyama sold the 7-second loss, it made it like you're probably thinking a 7-second loss. It's just like what a joke.
Yeah.
He made it like, oh my God, I got beat in 7 seconds, and it was a great thing for the company because you know how that crowd often sits there for 15 minutes knowing no one's losing early.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
so,
I mean that's awesome. You do something like that, and it comes across as completely unexpected. And that's the thing, man. About the Japanese wrestlers, everything they do, it's so believable. Everything.
From Mike, and it's from Rick Jones in Salt Lake City, who says we've started a wrestling school in Salt Lake City and are aiming to start our first show in the summer. And is there a way to get a hold of you to come in and work the show?
Yeah. You can call All Pro Wrestling at 510-785-8396 and give them a buzz. You can also call me on my business line, 510-593-3615.
Okay, that's good. Let's get to Ryan in Wisconsin. Ryan, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. Hi, Mike. How's it going?
How you doing, buddy?
Good. I just wanted to ask Dave a quick question about something, and then I wanted to ask Mike a couple questions. What's with Bob Ryder's vendetta against you lately? He's been going off on you so much.
The thing is about that is like I'm kind of aware of what he's saying now because people keep emailing it to me. It's like I kind of like it because it's just like more publicity for me. But then if I were to respond, the problem is then everyone's going to go, oh boy, it's like this catfight between two reporters, and then it like lowers me to this level that I don't really want to be at. So it's like I would rather just watch wrestling and comment on wrestling and leave that other stuff. Like, those guys can say whatever they want.
I was going to say, I think it's all a work. I don't think there's any heat between Dave and Bob at all. I think what they're trying to do is work their way onto a pay-per-view. It's a big.
Yeah, but I'm not like. I'm not doing the angle very well. You better give me pointers on.
Either.
What?
You're not like 100 pounds overweight, so you couldn't have a Madden Ryder feud against you. You'd look too
No,
small.
I personally like Mark Madden, so.
Well, I think he does a really good job. I mean, it's just funny because
I'm not talking business-wise. I just have known the guy for like 15 years. That's what I mean. As far as, I think that as far as TV, I think Mark Madden's got a really quick wit. He's still feeling his way around. It's very different to internet commentary where you're doing a lot of smart than going on TV in front of 5 million people every Monday night on the flagship show. I mean, I think he's doing well, but he's improving.
Yeah. Did you hear any of? I'm sure you heard of a lot of Russo's comments last week on WCW Live.
Yes.
I actually listened to that, and as a wrestling fan, and I've always considered myself an NWA then WCW fan instead of a WWF fan, I was like totally appalled by some of his comments because I was like, I like the true wrestling, and I think for him to come out and say, "Oh, the title doesn't mean anything anymore," and I'm a wrestling fan, let alone what the actual workers must actually think about that, because if you don't have your top title, what does your company stand for?
I actually just wrote something the other day about this, for this coming issue, because somebody who heard what Russo said and agreed with it just goes, it's just a prop, and if you look at it, and you don't really look at it deeply. You would say, if you're an outsider who's not a wrestling fan, and it's just like an example, if you watch Wrestling with Shadows, and you kind of going like, wait a minute, what's all this about some, fake title that they win and lose, by the orders of the promoter? Why was he upset? If you look at it that way, to someone who isn't really a wrestling fan, it is completely silly. But if you understand the psychology of wrestling, I'll tell you what, because I was thinking about this. Realistically, on last night's pay-per-view, just as a guess, I'm guessing they probably did 450 to 500,000 buys. If there was no title involved in that show, I don't know if they would have done 300. So you're talking about that title is worth 150,000 buys at $30 a head, so that's $4.5 million. That's what it was worth last night. It was probably worth, in fact, I actually figured this number out. It's probably worth $12 million 4 weeks ago at Mania if you took the title out of that four-way and figured what it would have drawn with or without it. So that championship is worth, probably, over the course of this year, the WF title is probably the value of that title. Forget about athletic credibility, the economic credibility of that title. It may be worth $30-40 million in a year. And for Russo to say it's not worth anything, that statement tells me, and I hate to do this, I didn't even want to talk about this in front of Mike because he's in a bad position, but I feel that shows that Vince Russo does not understand professional wrestling. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong, but I'm just looking at it from a numbers and a money standpoint. $30-40 million is pretty significant bread.
That's what I was thinking too. And then you can even probably times that by 2 if you consider.
And I'm not talking house shows, and I'm not even talking TV ratings. I'm talking for 12 pay-per-views a year only. Factor everything else in, it's even more.
Yeah, and then look at who your actual title holder is, and you can probably multiply that by 2, because if you put a Rock or an Austin up against David Arquette headlining a pay-per-view, which do you think is gonna? It just doesn't make any sense. I guess.
Also, just talk about Rock, okay? If Rock did not have a quest for the title as the main storyline feud the last couple of months, or before Rock, and actually between Rock, because he did one before and after, you had Mick Foley in his quest for the title. If you didn't have that as your key storyline, what would Rock be doing once you've exhausted the personal issues, which are, of course, a main part of it? That belt is the ultimate issue in most cases. Every now and then a feud supersedes the world title, but that's rare.
Yeah, I guess just hearing his comments and everything, it's like, he's saying that nobody wants to watch real wrestling. Well, if he's such a creative genius, he should be able to take a different approach to pro wrestling to make it unique to the WWF, and that would be to actually put on a strong wrestling. Granted, the WWF is getting more stronger in the wrestling, but if they really wanted to make a niche for themselves, they could be the wrestling place with strong storylines to back up the strong wrestling, where WWF has got the strong storylines backed up by fairly good wrestling with some of the wrestlers. But I think that would be a niche for them to be able to go after. Granted, they've lost a lot of talent with Malenko and Benoit gone, but they have enough talent on that. I'd sort of like to get Mike's view, because he said he wanted to be more. I mean, he's more of a wrestler. I mean, I guess I'd sort of like to get his views on that point.
Yeah,
Mike,
it's like, I hear what you're saying. I think what Russo's trying to do is he's trying to really implement the entertainment value, that Vince has implemented with WWF, and I understand what Russo's doing. I don't know that I agree with the David Arquette thing, and I don't know that I agree with the fact that the title doesn't, with what he said about the title not meaning anything. But I do understand, what he's trying to implement. But I think it's important, for any booker to remember that there is a reason why people are not tuning in to Melrose Place, and they are tuning in to Raw. And it is because of the wrestling. Vince always likens his product to a soap opera. Well, yeah, it's a soap opera to an extent, but there's still athletic competition. There's still the excitement of who's going to win this match and the unexpected action. People still like to see, like Mae Young getting slammed through a table and things like that. I mean, people love to see the wrestling action side of it. So, I hope that, any booker of any promotion, I would hope that they wouldn't forget what industry they're working for. They're not working for Hollywood specifically. Vince always says, well, we make movies here. Well, yeah, to a certain extent that's kind of true, but it's important to remember that you make action movies that most of the storyline happens in and around the ring. So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I got to be real careful what I say. But I do understand where Russo's coming from. I don't think he's actually saying that the wrestling isn't important at all. I would think he would realize that the in-ring product is still very, very important.
I think one thing that everyone needs to recognize, and sometimes is forgotten, is that there's a reason why guys have to go to wrestling school and learn to perform. And sometimes we've seen it on shows when you see people who are not trained to wrestle try to wrestle. It's not entertainment.
No, it's not entertaining at all. Not one little bit. I heard someone say one time that they really thought it was entertaining to watch someone go in the ring that wasn't trained. And like, for instance, one of the Misfits wrestled Dr. Death in a steel cage a while back, and a friend of mine was saying, that was kind of entertaining. And I said, well, yeah, it was kind of entertaining for you because he was an insider. He knew, he knows the business. He works in the business. And so for him, it was kind of funny to watch this guy that wasn't trained go in there and try to wrestle a match with Dr. Death. But I think to someone that's not smart to the business or doesn't, really pay attention to the business, I think for them to watch that, I think they're going to be like, oh God, what kind of crap is this? My kids can do this in the backyard. I don't see anybody, there's not a whole lot of backyard promotions that are selling out.
Yeah, that was an embarrassing to watch.
Yeah, that was awful.
Yeah.
Do you ever make your way to the Midwest in any of your wrestling, Mike?
What states in particular?
And like where in particular in the Midwest?
Like anything in Wisconsin?
No, I've never been to Wisconsin.
Okay. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of shows in the area. I've caught some of the WCW, WWF, and ECW, but all the smaller promotion independents are really bad.
Yeah.
If some good workers come in, it'd be sort of nice to see. And I actually had a comment, I tried to call him last week, with some of the Phil Mushnick comments, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually at the ECW show that was in La Crosse, probably maybe 2 months ago. And I actually went with my dad, and it was his first wrestling match that he'd been to probably in about 20 years. And I'm like, I go, it's pretty unique than what you're used to, because he went to a lot of the AWA stuff. He knew the promoters, and we went to a lot of those matches. I'm like, it's different than that. I'm like, I go, but I think you'll get a kick out of it. Well, where we sat down, across from us was a family, probably maybe 30 years old. The two parents were with their, I don't know, maybe 10-year-old kids. I'm like, if they last a half an hour, I will be surprised. The show started late. Dreamer comes out, and it was blank this, blank that. You know, this is the blankiest town. And they were out of there within like 20 minutes. And I think he had some valid points that some of this wrestling just isn't suitable. I don't know if 18 years old is the right age, but I think there needs to be, I don't know if we should ban them, but there should be some more parental guidance because I don't think these people watch ECW on TNN. They just thought, oh, wrestling, let's go down to the Civic Center and watch some wrestling. So, I think they need to do, if there's, a warning, this may be offensive to children under this, on the even or something. I think they need to do something like that.
Mike, because you've been involved a lot with the APW as far as booking what's on the show. It's sometimes risque, sometimes when you're in high schools it's not. That's a real tough call, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And depending on what community you go into, different things are acceptable, and we've gotten a lot of heat. We've even gone to schools where, a guy so much as grabs a valet's arm, and we've actually gotten heat from, the city and everything about it. So, yeah, it's tough. And if I'm not mistaken, I think ECW does make it somehow obvious. I'm not sure, but I think I heard someone say that they do put up like a disclaimer, outside where you buy the tickets, some kind of thing explaining that this is an adult orientated type thing, and they're not so bad that like teenagers couldn't go, but I would say definitely they're not real great for small children. But it's funny, I wrestled for promotion down in LA, and they use a lot of porn stars and stuff, and there was this kid, I swear he was probably like 9 years old, and he had this Jasmine St. Clair shirt on, and his parents bought him Jasmine St. Clair videos and stuff. And I just thought, oh, Jesus Christ, that's Jeffrey Dahmer in the making, I just couldn't believe it. And he's talking like a sailor. This kid's like F this and F that, and he's spitting and yelling, and I couldn't believe it, So, it's one of the nice things about America is you got freedom of speech, and if they don't like the show, they can leave. And I'm sure, Paulie probably gave them their money back, Paulie's a pretty fair guy, so I'm sure they were, totally out of it. They got 20 minutes of wrestling, and then they probably got their money back and took off. So
yeah, I was like, oh, I made that call right, because I'm just like, I've watched enough tapes on it that I knew what to expect, and I was just like, oh man, they're not going to last.
Yeah,
and I'm like, Ryan, it's really bad.
Yeah, Ryan, we've got to head to a break, and also Mike's got to go because he's actually supposed to leave a couple of minutes ago. Mike, I just want to thank you. Okay, Ryan. Mike, I want to thank you very much for doing the show today, and I want to wish you the best of luck. Are there any dates you've got coming up you want to plug real quick?
Well, I've got one coming up May 6th here at Pacifica High School in California, and that's about it within the next week or two. And then we've got something coming up in Healdsburg, but I'm not exactly sure, what the date is. But APW is still kicking strong and everything. And well, anyways, Dave, I'll let you go. I know you got to go, but I'd love to be on again, because there's a lot of stories I'd like to tell. So.
Okay, well, you're welcome to come back anytime.
Okay, take care, Dave.